Greetings, Star Trek Fleet Commanders. I am the Angry Rhino. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel. So as promised, the second part of my event store video, this one focusing on the officer bucket. Yes, there are other things in the event store, but with the new editions bucket and the officer bucket, really the only things that change. Now, if you do have questions about some of the other things and what or if they are worth it, feel free to ask. Starting with the officers, and they're in a relative good order. Shocker. Epics loaded up front, and then all the rares. And in order, which is weird. Never see these things in any kind of order that works for me anyway, which kind of makes sense. Two officers at the end here, Icheb and Tuvok. They are part of what? Shit, I forgot what her thing is. It would be what? Explorer Retaliation Squad, led by 7 of 9, or is this Battleship Retaliation Squad? They do pair nicely with her, but as I mentioned several times, I don't like the fact that the crew is based on what your opponent is using. It does make it somewhat harder. And to go along with that, their below deck ability only activates if there's no state. If on a ship with no state, when does that happen in PvP anymore? Maybe, you can't even say explorers, because if you're using an explorer, you put morale on. So maybe if you're on a battleship and you're fighting an explorer, because explorer is going to use morale, it's going to put it on itself and not you. And you are going to put burning on the opponent. It's just way too niche for me. That's why I just don't put any stock in some of these officers. Not only is it they're only good in PvP, but it's even certain instances in PvP. Otherwise, they're not good. Cool. So I'm going to say Tuvok and Icheb are not worth your credits. But by all means, if you want to get them, go ahead. Miss Q and Romy are part of Soren's crew, which should be Explorer Retaliation Squad. If I remember correctly. Yeah, because he's burning, so you're fighting an Explorer. Again, they pair very nicely with him. Again, if you're fighting an Explorer. That happens, what, a third of the time in PvP? That's pretty low. Now, their below deck abilities, I feel like you can get some use out of this because, see Miss Q here on round start, if placed on a ship with morale, like say you're using Explorer, Strike Team, or what's the one for Starfleet Q? This should be Interceptor Retaliation Squad. He's putting morale on your ship. You can get more Apex Barrier. So there is some use there. There's still not that much use. But there's some use there. So in my opinion, the other rares just increase the amount of instances where they're useful. Whereas I feel like Tuvok and Icheb just don't have that many. Miss Q, Romy, Field Marshal Q, Mariachi Q have a few more. Romy, again, she pairs very nicely with Soren. And below deck ability, if you put Hull Breach on your opponent, you can get more Apex Barrier. Which, if anything, for below deck ability, Romy is one of the, or however you actually pronounce that, it's actually one of the higher useful ones, because how many PvP crews put Hull Breach on your opponent? I mean, you got to think about Carol Freeman crew. We like to use Lorca. In some cases, you can use Gorkon. In some cases, I think Gorkon might be better, just because his Hull Breach is higher percentage. But it's fine. And then you have what? Interceptor Strike Team, and then the 7 of 9 crew, which was Battleship Retaliation Squad. Yeah. It's confusing sometimes. So there's an increased number of instances. So whereas like one or two instances, let's say out of 10, because what you have three, well, maybe it's not 10. You got 3 strike teams. You got Carol Freeman. You have Mirror Universe, Crew. Couple variations there, maybe. So let's say 2 variations of the Mirrorverse. Maybe 1 variation with Carol Freeman. 3 strike teams, and then you got your 3 retaliation squads. I guess you can throw them in there. So maybe that's 9. So what? Really, one instance with some of these Tuvok and Icheb, and maybe even you can throw Miscue in there. 1 of 9. That's tough. With Romy, I feel like it's more like 3 of 9. So there's more usefulness out of this. I feel like Field Marshal. No, I'm gonna go with Mariachi Q first. Mariachi Q first. He's probably about the same as Romy because Battleship Strike Team, I feel like, has never really gone away. Or at least it hasn't gone away as much as some of the other ones did. Just because of Strike Team Una and the way her ability works. Well, here you go. You can get more Apex Barrier with a Battleship Strike Team. Useful. Assuming you like using Battleship Strike Team. I also feel like there is a lot of enterprises out there. It is the, we'll call it the it's flagship of Starfleet, but it's also practically a character in all the shows as it is. So I feel like a lot more people want to go Enterprise than say some of the other ships. So Battleship Strike Team has remained useful and probably will until, they get replaced again. Go back to Field Marshal Q as far as below deck abilities. And again, these rares pair nicely with their captain. As far as below deck abilities, I feel like he's the absolute best one because he will maybe not activate in all instances. Because if you are running, let's say, Explorer Strike Team or Interceptor Retaliation Squad, you put morale on yourself. And therefore, the only way to get something on your opponent is if you use Dazok and put Assimilate below, which you can do. And then therefore, even in those instances, Field Marshal Q activates. On round start, if an enemy player has any state, Field Marshal Q repairs blank hull percentage taken in the previous round of combat. I have him at tier 2, so it's 10%. Or is he tier 3? Actually, he's tier 3. Is it the best ability? Is it always going to work out for you and make you win a battle? Depends. I mean, you're fighting another player that has their own way of thinking. It's not always going to help you. But if you think about it like this, so you get 10% here. If you like pairing him with either Hull Breacher or the Burner, there is a favor in the Exborg, if I'm not mistaken, tree where when your opponent has one of those states, you get Hull Repair, much like this ability. So if you get 20% from that ability, you get 10% from him. Yeah, okay, that's 30%. Again, only a tier 3. Higher tiers, it's going to be more. There's also New Hugh, who does the same thing, except he just doesn't. He doesn't need any kind of state or any kind of other thing to activate. He just activates. And he can get up to like 30%. Is there great sourcing for him? Meh. But at some point, you could be getting up to 50, 60, maybe even 70%. So I feel like, especially if you use this on Battleship Strike Team, which is a team that really likes to extend the battle, Interceptor Strike Team as well. Be very beneficial. Because this will help you extend the battle. Because instead of somebody doing 100% damage to you, they're only doing like 50%. So you have to make it to the next round. If you don't make it to the next round, then you get nothing. So it's not that great, but it is, in my opinion, the most, maybe not the most useful, but the one that's going to activate the most in more instances where some of the other ones just don't. Now, which one of the rares would I suggest putting more currency in? Gonna have to figure out what PvP crew works well with you. I don't think it's gonna be Icheb or Tuvok, so you can cross them off the list. I already forgot what she does. Morale. I feel like less people use morale, but again, if you're one of those enterprise people, Miss Q's gonna be it for you. If you like using Interceptor Strike Team or the 7 of 9 crew that you just got, or Carol Freeman, Romi's going to be for you. If you love Battleship Strike Team, Mariachi Q is going to be for you. They're going to give you more Apex Barrier, actually. Yeah, because there are some other researches and building buffs that give you some Apex Barrier. These are going to give you even more. And then Field Marshal Q, I feel like, works well in all the instances. But again, you have to survive the round. So if anything, I feel Mariachi Q, Field Marshal Q, or I'm sorry, not Field Marshal Q, French Marshal Q, and Romy about equal. Miss Q and Icheb and Tuvok, I just feel like are lower, at least for me anyway, because I don't PvP that much with Explorers for one reason or another. I just never. I guess it feels like the Enterprise is the flagship Explorer for this game, and I like being contrary, I guess. That, and I hate the saucer design. It just looks so stupid. Dumb. They don't even look like warships. They look like cruise ships. You know, under the Retaliation Captains, you got 7 of 9 here, or Specialist 7. I'm sorry. Specialist 7. Her officer ability is the one that activates the state hull breach on your opponent, so you do need to tier her up if you want to improve your odds. It's not like the other one where it's in the captain's seat, so with the synergy, you'll just put the state on, or you activate the state, because morale goes on your ship. And then her captain ability, the one that you get synergy from, is the one that increases your shots. Which very nice. It'll work. Again, assuming your opponent will cooperate with you. Sometimes that's the case, sometimes it's not. Though, if you know your opponent well, these crews can be very nice for you. Soren here, again, burning, captain ability. He puts the state on with the captain ability, and below deck ability, not below deck ability, officer ability increases your Apex Barrier. Not shots like 7 of 9, but Apex Barrier. So you could be getting close to 20,000 Apex Barrier. You put enough. Which one's burning? Who was burning? Mariachi Q was burning. Soren here, he burns. He also gives the Apex Barrier when you're burning. So you could boost your Apex Barrier by 20,000? That's, it sounds like a lot. What's a lot? I don't know. Because more and more things come out, researches and whatever buffs, some of the shit gets kind of dwarfed. It's the way it is. It's sad, but it's true. It's a lot of Apex Barrier. Is that something you want? Again, does only kind of work if your opponent cooperates with you. Starfleet Q. He is the Explorer Retaliation Squad. I guess a good way to try to remember it is It's Interceptor Retaliation Squad because he activates Morale. Morale goes with Explorers. Explorers are good against Interceptors. At least they have an advantage. Whether they'll win or not, that's debatable. Depends on crews and research. Again, he activates Morale with his captive ability. Again, he puts it on your ship. He doesn't put it on your opponent's ship. He puts it on your ship. Again, so each have been 2 box. Their below deck abilities are not going to work with this crew. Because you're the one making it not work. This is the way it goes. It's kind of shitty. And again, with the officer ability, increases your apex barrier. Which again, can be combined with... Was it Miss Q? Miss Q did apex barrier with morale below decks. So, I know for the most part, I feel like we tend to lean towards officers in some of these event stores. Mainly because they haven't been bringing out a lot of new stuff. Well, some of these officers have been in an event store. I feel like Starfleet Q, Mariachi Q, Field Marshal, French Marshal Q. I keep saying Field Marshal. French Marshal Q have been in an event store. That's why I have them at the tiers I have them. So, and I feel like they're kind of niche. They really are niche. Now, some of the other things niche in the other bucket that I went over, the new additions bucket, sure. Can't believe I'm going to say this, but I feel like the Qs here, Mariachi Q, French Marshal Q, and Starfleet Q, really French Marshal Q and Mariachi Q, I feel like for me personally, they're the ones I'm going to use the most. And I've already had an opportunity to get them in the event store. Now, can I get more shards and make them better? Sure. Absolutely benefit me. But, as you can see, I need 155. So that's 310,000 event store currency. It's kind of a lot just to go up one tier. A little bit less with Mariachi Q because I was only able to get him to tier 2. So maybe this one will actually bump up to tier 3. But because I've already had the chance and I don't really like the other officers, I feel like I'm not going to spend as much event store currency on officers this month just because there was a whole bunch of new additions. Well, let's wrap this video up. I don't need to go on too much more about this. Talking about the officers here, as I promised, the part 2 of my event store video, explaining the officers available in the event store and what they do, best of my ability, and I'm coming to the conclusion that I feel like, at least for this month, we'll see in the next months, this officer bucket is not going to take the higher priority in event store for me. Because the 2 officers in here that I like the most, Mariachi Q and French Marshal Q, I've already had an opportunity to get them, and I got them somewhat higher, and therefore it will cost even more event store currency for me to get any more benefit out of them. And at the same time, I look at some of the other things in some of the new edition buckets, or in the new edition bucket, and it's 150,000 event store currency to unlock this one thing and take advantage of it. So I feel like that's the best way to spend my event store currency. Whether you will or not, I know it's a hard decision. Because we seem to got set in this mode where officers were the best thing in the event store. At least for some of us. And I feel like it's gonna change because I don't think any of these retaliation squads really caught on as much. I mean, maybe it's just that way on my server because I still feel like When I'm in PvP, I'm seeing strike teams, I'm seeing Freeman crew, I'm seeing Mirrorverse. Not seeing a whole lot of retaliation squads. Maybe that changes with the event store, but I feel like there's a whole bunch of people on my server that spend money and they would have had these crews and been using them. I just haven't seen them as much. So, yeah. Comment below. Which bucket do you think is going to take more higher priority for you in this event store? Do you like these officers? Do you like the retaliation squads? Or do you feel like the new additions bucket, because of their new additions, seem to be shinier, something newer to play with than, let's say, an officer? And maybe some of these officers that actually have been in an event store already. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel. I'm the Angry Rhino. Shields up, Commanders.